Okay, for topic 3, we're going to solve percent problems using the proportion method. And when it comes to the rest of this chapter, I don't really care which method you use, if you use the equation or the proportion. As far as the teaching videos, I'll try to flip-flop and do both from time to time so that those of you that like the proportion, you'll see some examples with the proportion. Some of you that like the equation, you'll see examples with the equation. I'm not going to have time to do both methods for every problem though, okay? So kind of choose the one you like the most. However, if you are going into a course with lots of algebra, it might be worth really understanding the equation method instead of the proportion method. Okay? Now, steps for solving. Solving, we have to remind ourselves, is the process of isolating the variable to determine its value. We've already solved proportions. We've done this before. This is nothing new. Okay? We always, in these situations, need to assign a variable to the unknown quantity. So when we build our proportion, the 4 pieces that make up the proportion, one is going to be missing. We assign the variable to that missing piece, okay? You do not, remember right here, you do not have to write your percent in decimal form to do the proportion method, okay? We're putting the percent number over 100. So instead of converting it to decimal form, we're really just converting it to fraction form, okay? And then what we have to do to solve is we cross multiply and then solve for whatever the missing piece is, okay? So quick reminder, let me go to the highlighter. So a quick reminder, we talked about this in the previous worksheet as well. If the amount is greater than the base, the percent will be greater than 100. And that should make sense because remember, the amount is some portion of the base. If the amount is bigger than the base, it has to have a percent that's more than 100. But if the base is greater, then you get the percent that's less than 100, okay? So keep that in mind. Alrighty, let's go ahead and look at some examples, okay? So the directions here say solve each percent problem using proportions, okay? So we'll label each part, the amount, the base, and the percent. We'll fill in the proportion, and then we'll solve, okay? So we have what number is 8%, so that's always the easy part. So what number is 8% of 120? Now remember, we apply the percent to the base, which means we multiply the percent to the base, or we multiply the percent and the base, however you want to word that, okay? So which number are we going to end up multiplying by this 8%? Well, what number is 8% of 120? That of 120 represents my base. So I'm going to take my percent, I'm going to apply it to this base, and you'll see this when we do the cross multiplying. And the result is going to be some unknown value. So what number is 8% of 120? Well, we don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. Okay? So when we fill in the percent proportion, remember it's the amount over the base equals whatever the percent number is over 100. So we're going to take the amount, we don't know what it is, so we're just going to call it A. You can use a different variable if you would prefer. So A over the base, which is 120, equals the percent, which is just 8. We don't have to do anything to it, just knock off the percent symbol, and then we put that over 100. So we've essentially converted our percent into a ratio using that 100 as the denominator. Now we cross multiply. And remember, when you cross multiply, you multiply the diagonals. So we're going to multiply one numerator by the other denominator, and then we're going to multiply the other denominator by the other numerator. So we just multiply those diagonals, okay? And remember here, the base is 120 and the percent is 8. So when I cross multiply, I'm going to be applying my percent to my base. I'll be multiplying the two. So let's see. We're going to get 100 times A equals 120 times 8. Now, you have to show your steps. Your calculator is absolutely allowed, but your calculator is only allowed to do the side work. We still have to see all of your steps. So a step that the calculator would for sure be allowed is if you don't know what 120 times 8 is, use your calculator. So get your calculators out. 120 times 8 is 960. So I'm going to get 100A equals 960. And then I need to undo the multiplication of 100 and A. In order to undo that multiplication, we divide. But if I divide on one side, I must divide on the other. So 100 divided by 100, that just divides out to be 1. 1 times A is A. And then 960 divided by 100, if you don't know how to do that multiplication by hand, that's fine. But 960 divided by 100 is 9.6. And that is our final answer. So we can officially say that 9.6 is 8% of 120. Okay, so that is solving percent problems using the proportion method. Okay, now for our next example, we have 75% of what number is 60. So 75%, that's the easy one, that's our percent. Now we're taking this 75% and we're applying it to some unknown value. So this unknown value is going to be our base. And then once we apply the percent to the base, we get some other value, which is 60, and that is the amount, okay? So we fill in the percent proportion. Remember, it's always amount over base. The base is unknown here. And you don't have to use a B. You could use an X or something if you wanted to. And that equals 75 over 100. Remember, we don't have to convert 75% to a decimal because by putting it over 100, we're converting it to fraction form, which works, and it works better for us in this situation. Okay, we cross multiply. So remember, when we cross multiply, we multiply along the diagonals. Okay, so I get 75 times B equals 60 times 100. So I get 75B equals, well, if you can't do the 60 times 100 in your head, that's okay. Use your calculator. The trick is you multiply the 6 and the 1, and then you just add however many zeros. So I've got 1 0, 2 zeros, 3 zeros. So my answer needs 3 zeros. So we would end up getting 6,000. And then I have to undo the multiplication of 75 and B. So in order to undo that multiplication, I divide by 75. And if I do it on one side, I must do it on the other. 75 divided by itself is just 1. And then if I take 1 times B, I just get a single B. So I write it as just plain old B. And then it would be very reasonable to go to the calculator to do 6,000 divided by 75. So I don't really want to flip back and forth too much, but if we do need to flip back and forth, we've got our calculator, 6,000 divided by 75, and we get 80. Okay, so 6,000 divided by 75 is 80. All right, so we would say that 75% of 80 is 60. Okay, now the last two examples, just like in the previous worksheet, are going to be the two hardest. When you're solving these percent problems, it's always hardest to find the percent because it's just harder to differentiate in my mind between the amount and the base. It's not really hard, it's just a little bit harder when the percent is the one missing. So you've just got to be really, really careful about what your amount and your base are, okay? So for part C, it says what percent, so what is attached to percent, that means it's for sure the missing piece. So what percent of 40 is 6? So we want to take some percentage of this 40 number. So that means the percent needs to be applied to 40. So 40 is my base. And then once I do that, the result is 6. So that would be my amount. Okay? So we're going to fill in our percent proportion, which is the amount over the base equals the percent over 100. Okay, so it happens to be the percent that's missing. No big deal. It's going to work out the same way. We don't have to do anything crazy here. All right, we cross multiply. So I would get, remember, along the diagonals, I would get 40 times P. I always multiply the diagonal that has the variable first. That's just my preference. You don't always have to do that, but that's what I always do. So I get 40 times P equals 6 times 100. Well, 6 times 100, luckily, is pretty easy. That's just 600. And then I need to undo the multiplication of 40 and P. So I would divide both sides by 40. On the left, 40 divided by itself is 1. 1 times P is just P. And then it would be very appropriate at this point to use the calculator to do your side work of 60 divided by, or 600 divided by 40. So let's go to the calculator really quick. And we have 600 divided by 40 is 15, okay? And because we're solving for the percent, we don't want to just put 15, we want to put 15%, okay? And there you have it. So we would now say 15% of 40 is 6, Okay, last up, 366 is what percent of 160? Now, a common mistake that students make is they always say that the amount is less than the base, and that is not always true. There can definitely be situations where the amount is greater than the base. So this problem right here can be tricky for some students, okay? So we have 366 is some unknown percent of 160. So remember, you always have to decide what is the entire quantity, and a really easy way to decide that is to ask yourself which number is the percent being applied to. So I have 366 is what percent of 160. So I'm applying my percent to 160, which makes 160 my base. And then you can kind of read this. We're saying 336 is the result when I apply my percent to 160. So 366 is the amount. So this is a situation where the amount really is bigger than the base. So when we solve for our percent, we should expect a percent that's greater than 100. So let's fill in the proportion and the math will work itself out. So we get 336, the amount, over the base of 160 equals some unknown percent over 100. We would want to cross multiply. And remember, I'm always going to cross multiply the diagonal that contains the variable. I'm always going to do that first. So I get 160 times P equals 336 times 100. So 160 times P is good for now. But then 336 times 100, don't be too alarmed by this. This is actually really easy multiplication. We need to take the 336 times the 1. So 336 times 1 is just 336. And then add however many zeros were in your factors. So we have 2 zeros. So that tells me that 336 times 100 is 33,600. We need to undo the multiplication of 160 and P. So I would divide, and I have to do that on both sides. So divide both sides by 160. On the left, 160 divided by itself is just 1. 1 times P is P. And then it would for sure be reasonable to let the calculator do your side work here. So we have 33,600 divided by 160. So let's see, 33,600. We want to divide that by 160, and we get 210, okay? So we get 210, but remember, since we're solving for P, it's not just naked 210, it's 210 with a percent symbol on. So 210%. And that should make sense because 336 is more than double 160. So since it's more than double 160, we should be getting more than 200% in this case. Okay? So there you have it. That is solving percent problems using proportions. Generally speaking, like I mentioned before, I don't care which method you use. So I don't really generally have an issue with using just the equation method or just the proportion method. I think it is wise to understand generally how to use both of them. But if you are going to a course that has algebra in it, you probably want to really understand the percent equation a little bit more. Okay? So there you have it. That is solving percent problems with the percent proportion.